Hello, and welcome. I've been playing Tower of Fantasy a lot on Twitch lately, so much so that I am one of the top players in the US server, and occasionally I snatch the top rank on the leaderboard. But I'm not here to flex. I'm here to give you my honest opinion on the game. This will be my first of two reviews. I will post another review on the last day of the closed beta test. Before I do, however, I will first give my summary of the game. Tower Fantasy is an MMORPG gacha game where you are an executor, aka special agent, for a faction called Hykros. You have time retracement and time slowing abilities, as well as simulacra abilities that let you use the combat capabilities of past executors, this being the gacha content of the game. I will try not to spoil any story content, so I won't summarize much more than that. Tower Fantasy is often compared to Genshin Impact, understandably so. I would just like to point out that I've never played Genshin Impact or any gacha game for that matter. I only played Fire Emblem Heroes because I like the Fire Emblem franchise, and I didn't even really like that. Although I have not played Genshin, I have heard from many others that there is a lot more content to the game, both multiplayer and single player content, than Genshin Impact. But as I have not played Genshin Impact, I cannot confirm this, and this will be the only time I draw a comparison between the two games. Before we start the proper review, in the closed beta test, we were not able to spend any money on the game whatsoever, so I am not sure how bad the pay to win content will actually be. But we can draw a few speculations on what it will be like, and there will be a section of the video just for that. Anyways, let's actually start this review. I'm going to start off by talking about the combat in Tower of Fantasy. I feel like this is inspired by Genshin Impact a bit because I've never seen anything like it in an MMO. I actually like the combat and the weapons in this game. The only real downside to the combat is the targeting. The targeting is really scuffed sometimes. I find a few of my abilities shoot in the opposite direction than the enemy, and there are a few really stupid targeting settings. But this is offset by all the upsides of the combat system. You can have 3 different weapons equipped at any time, and all of your weapons have different abilities, passives, elements, combos, and types. Different enemies will have weaknesses and resistances to these elements, which is pretty standard. On top of this, joint operations and other dungeon-like instances will also give the enemies in the dungeon various resistances and weaknesses, making you think about your build and your team setup before going in. Unofficially, for DPS, there are 3 weapon types. Standard DPS, which is for raw damage per second, shield breaking, which is to break shield, and they often have good burst damage, and support DPS, which is to give yourself buffs or to give the enemy debuffs, and these are often quick swap just to use the abilities. You don't really have to worry about this if you're not going for top play, but as a top player in the US server, I found that you really do need to keep this in mind if you want to max out DPS. As for weapon types, depending on what kind of weapons you have equipped, you will gain various buffs. There is Dissonance, which is your standard buff. There is Fortitude, which is your tank. There is Attack, which is your DPS. And there is Benediction, your healer. This creates your holy trinity, whilst also allowing people to build their characters however they want, and even change their builds on the fly, as long as they're out of combat. Let's say you have a DPS build on and you need more healing. You can change your weapons around and bam, you're a healer now. Of course, to get weapons, you have to go through the gacha system. I've always been on the edge about loot boxes and gacha. Every game that uses it abuses multiple loopholes to make it legal. However, the gacha system in Tower of Fantasy, at least in the closed beta test, is very forgiving. Don't get me wrong, I'm certain this will change once it fully releases, but the closed beta test is all I can really go off of. Like in other games, or like in other gacha games, so I hear, Tower of Fantasy has a pity system, which basically means after you do enough pulls, you get a guaranteed SSR, which are the weapons you obviously want. Furthermore, when you do pull an SSR on a non-pity roll, it does not reset your pity, which many members in the global chat and the Discord have praised. As for duplicates, if you get a duplicate item for an SR or an SSR item, you can use that to advance your weapon, making it much stronger. You can do this up to 6 times after receiving the weapon. If you get even more duplicates after advancing the weapon to 6 stars, you get black gold, which buys you other items, including other duplicates if you need them for other weapons, or you can also buy booster frames, nano frames, and the other frames that are required for weapon upgrades. This has, once again, been a feature praised by others in the Discord. On top of pulling the weapons, you also get a simulacra, or a banner. Instead of using your own character's appearance, you can also use the simulacra's appearance. If you get the weapon to 3 stars, you also get a weapon skin and a character skin. Apart from being able to look like a hot guy or a girl, with an outfit that is unfortunately unobtainable for your own character, which simulacra equipped actually serves a practical purpose as well. Depending on which simulacra you have equipped and your awakening, aka affection, with that simulacra, you will also get a nature. Getting a nature gives you a passive buff. I personally use Samir most of the time, which gives me more damage as long as I don't get hit, and also she's hot. One thing I dislike about the gacha system are the limited simulacras. They're like the normal simulacras, except better in either PvP and or PvE than the non-limited simulacras. And also, you can only pull them for a short amount of time. On top of that, you can only pull them using red nuclei, which you cannot find out in the world, unlike the black and gold nuclei. You have to buy the red nuclei with black crystals, which you get from doing various tasks, but also it costs 150 black crystals per pull, which is pretty expensive. Furthermore, if you pull with just the red nucleus, even on pity, there still isn't a guaranteed chance you'll get the limited banner, just an increased chance. Compared to the other banners, you can already tell this is how the game is going to make their bank. With that aside, even though I don't like gacha systems or loot box systems, the gacha system in this game did not at all make me want to stop playing the game. Whale or no whale, a generous gacha system is an upside for everyone, and this is allegedly one of the better ones. Being an MMORPG, the Tower of Fantasy, of course, has a lot of multiplayer content, including world bosses, joint operations, interstellar exploration, dimensional trials, omnium beacons, kinda, not really, frontier clash, and void rifts. Oh, and Apex League, which is 1v1 PvP. Regarding Apex League, it is very unbalanced, and there are very clear metas to PvP. But honestly, there are very few MMOs out there with balanced PvP, so it's not a huge concern. Besides, PvP isn't mandatory. You get some titles, a few achievements, a few black crystals, which I guess helps slightly, and there's a vehicle, aka a mount, that you can get from PvP. So while the PvP is unbalanced and is even worse with the aforementioned limited banner issue, it's not going to be a huge stick in my review since you don't have to play the PvP for any reason. I played it a fair bit and admittedly used as many metas as I could. I never got Huma or the limited Claudia simulacra, which are both the top PvP weapons at the time of making this video, and I still got a decent ranking in Apex League. World bosses I find are too easy. I did a stream where I soloed 3 of the 6 world bosses in the game. As of right now, I can solo 4 of them, and the other 2 I cannot solo due to mechanics. Sobek has a one-shot ability that is extraordinarily hard to dodge, since he does it under the ground. I think it's bugged, honestly, that boss sucks dick, and it's just that one attack that makes it impossible to solo. Otherwise, it's a pretty easy world boss. And then you have Barbarossa, who has a mechanic where he summons enemies, and he will regenerate health while they are summoned. Honestly, Barbarossa is fine, but I just can't kill his summons fast enough before he regenerates practically all of his health. Joint operations are basically 4-man raids. They're okay, but I have one big issue with joint operations. Joint operations have basically no raid or boss mechanics, period. Hyena's Arena has one boss mechanic where this giant flying bomb appears and to lure the boss into the bomb. Other than that, no other boss mechanics in any of the joint operations that I have seen. While there is a lot of multiplayer content, a lot of it is either lackluster or you'll only be able to do it once in a while. Frontier clashes where you defeat waves in a 4-man team. The more waves you clear, the higher the rewards. You get one attempt, respectively, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. up to 3 attempts total. And then you have Void Rift, where you have to go around, find buffs and keys to open the boss chamber. You can give buffs you find to other teammates, and you have to clear it as fast as possible for better rewards. But even this is lackluster, since you only fight bosses you meet throughout the story, and that you've probably killed many times before. You get an attempt on this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, up to 3 attempts total, like Frontier Clash, except different days. With every piece of multiplayer content, apart from world bosses, you need to spend Vitality to do, which Vitality is just an energy system. You can get more Vitality by paying Black Crystals, because of fucking course you can. For an MMO, the multiplayer content is pretty disappointing. There's almost no reason to be in a crew, aka guild. I would know I run a solo crew all by myself, and I'm still one of the top players in the US server. There's not even trading or an auction house, but I kind of understand why that's the case. With the gacha nature of the game, you'll be a broke bitch most of your time playing this game. But don't worry, there's an achievement for that. As such, the economy in this game just would not allow trading or an auction house system. While I can understand why there isn't trading or selling in the game, that doesn't excuse the lackluster multiplayer content, apart from PvP, which has its own problems. To be fair, we have not gotten to the true endgame yet. During the closed beta test, we could only level so much each day, and at the time of recording, the max level is 48 out of the true max level of 70. So there could be some endgame multiplayer content that I have not yet experienced. This is the main reason that I intend to make a second part to this review, and I will be making this after the end of the closed beta test. I was very disappointed by the user interface. Tower of Fantasy's UI looks good, don't get me wrong. It's just extremely convoluted. Many MMOs have a lot of UI, but for good reasons. There are many features in MMOs that need to be separated accordingly. Tower of Fantasy's user interface, however, is extremely bad. Many people ask questions about the user interface. Many users don't even know how to invite people to a party, understandably so. Why the hell is this called a commissary? Couldn't all of this just be subsections in the shop? Why are all the activities separated like this? What kind of category is select? It took me a long time to learn that we could look at combos and passes of each weapon. These aren't explained at all in any kind of tutorial. It's not very clear that this line indicator is actually a button that lets you switch lines. Many people have asked about this early on, and many people did not know how to switch lines. None of this UI is explained. You just have to guess based on the imagery, and even that isn't very clear at all. It's not even clear how to get to this page either. You have to click their profile pictures either in chat or in your friends list. Quite a bit of the UI clips off screen, likely because when translated from Chinese to English, it doesn't work. But why not just rename this to permissions or EULA? Because that's exactly what this is. There are many cases where they could have said basically the exact same thing, just in a shorter form and have it fit. Did they not see that this goes off screen? We haven't even gotten to the various UI bugs that I've experienced, such as things giving you notifications when it shouldn't, or giving you notifications when it should. There is also no manual for seeing what any hotkeys do apart from hotkeys that you can set yourself. One example of this is you can click F1 to toggle shortcut hints. This is not displayed anywhere, and this isn't even the only example. I try not to bring bugs into my reviews for games in a closed beta test, but some of this shouldn't be happening. The core issues with the UI is that they seem to have prioritized the visual appeal over the practicality of the UI. Very little of it is explained, the imagery gives very little if any idea what it does, some of it is straight up broken, and the convoluted nature of the user interface doesn't help with that whatsoever. What I also find interesting is that everything that I speculate will have some sort of paid content or monetization works perfectly with no issues at all, which brings us nicely into the next segment. There's a fair bit we can already tell about the full release of the game. Things that weren't around in the closed beta test, but things that will be added or changed. Just keep in mind that this is speculation, and I could be completely wrong. I think it's pretty obvious that we will be able to buy black crystals with money, and as a result, be able to buy pretty much anything we want. Gacha pulls, gold, vitality. The only thing we can't directly buy with black crystals is experience. However, I would argue that buying Vitality contributes a lot to experience, since joint operations are the fastest way to get experience that I have found. Furthermore, leveling in this game doesn't take long at all compared to most other MMOs. To be fair, we are limited to how much Vitality we can buy per day, but it's still a massive help. Next, I do think that we will still be limited on how much of the main story we can do per day, and much of the exploration content we can do will also be time locked. Rather than being timed from the start of the opening of the server, it will likely be timed from the start of the player making their character initially. I do not think that there will be any limit on how much we can level per day. If there is, that's a huge negative to the game. Unlike many other MMOs, I do not think that bots will be a problem at all for Tower of Fantasy. There is no way to give items to other players, and there's a limit on how many characters can be spoken in chat, so chatbots would not be prevalent either. It has been hinted, both through story and through various other things you can find around the world, that there are multiple continents, and I do think that there will eventually be multiple continents available to go to. This may even come in the form of an expansion of some sort. What makes this even more likely is the fact that they already have a good setup in the map GUI to do this. Finally, I think there will be more legendary drops from bosses around the map, and even world bosses. Maybe not right after release, but sometime in the future. Currently, the only legendary drop from non-world bosses are vehicle parts for mounts. World bosses can drop SSR characters or weapons at a very rare chance, but there's also a lot of potential for other legendary drops. These are just some aspects of the game that I feel should be addressed, either because they are very nice features or bad features, but weren't major enough to deserve their own segment. The first I'd like to talk about is character creation. Like in pretty much every MMORPG, there is character creation. You don't have to use the simulacra appearances at all. When I originally got the pre-download link for Tower of Fantasy, I was able to create a bunch of characters before the servers were even available. And that's a really good idea. Ashes of Creation should do something like that. A game I have been looking at as well. Anyways, the character customization in this game is really in depth. You can customize everything from your character's height and other sizes to your character's entire face shape. This honestly is like Vroid Studio if you couldn't import your own textures. Don't want to spend time creating your own character? That is fine. Not only does the game give you a few presets to use, but there are also thousands of presets that other people have made that you can also use. Finally, even after you make your character, you can spend 100 black crystals to change your appearance again, and you can get new outfits through various means to change up your character as well. In short, character creation in this game is fantastic. I love it. Next is the food system. When I initially played this game, I heard about the food system, but I wasn't expecting much. In most MMOs, food is just there to give temporary buffs to the player, and that's it. This game takes that a bit further, without making it so that you die if you don't eat. In this game, you have satiety, which I don't know how to pronounce still. As long as you are out of combat and you don't have any satiety, you will heal over time. If you don't have satiety, you will not heal over time, and you will get a debuff. Various foods will give buffs, as well as elemental damage increases, resistances, etc. I actually really like this system, and I hope to see other MMOs adopt similar food systems. I don't know if any other MMOs have used a similar satiety system. If you know of any, please leave them in the comments below. And the final thing I'd like to talk about in this segment is crews. Crews are guilds, just so you know. Crews are pointless. And for an MMO, that's bad. Make crews actually useful apart from the crew shops. Furthermore, it takes 3 days to disband a crew, and you can't leave a crew if you're the commander. Thankfully, I am quite certain this will be changed since I brought this up to the Discord admin, who apparently forwarded it to the devs. First and foremost, I want the user interface to either be better explained, just to make the UI less confusing. Many people in the closed beta were constantly confused by the UI, and honestly, I even have to look around for what I want to do in the UI. It's bad. It's very convoluted. It shouldn't be this bad. Please prioritize the practicality of the UI over the visual appeal of the UI. It's nice if it looks good, but if it works like shit, it's bad. Anything redundant in terms of UI, such as the commissary, should just be removed and put elsewhere. In the case of the commissary, it should just be put in the shop. This also includes recategorizing the activities. None of these categories make any sense at all. The challenge one is the only one that kind of makes sense. Next, I want more diverse dungeons and raids with actual mechanics to them. And no, one joint op mission with a mid-tier basic ass mechanic isn't enough. World bosses should be more challenging, but shouldn't have one-shot practically unavoidable abilities like Sobek does. I shouldn't be able to solo any world boss in 10 minutes. A crew I usually chill with called Genesis goes around and kills every single world boss in the game every single day. This usually takes around 15 to 20 minutes, including travel time. Furthermore, bosses should have more unique mechanics. Barbarossa is the only one I can think of that is alright. Make crews a bit more useful in some way. Maybe have crew versus crew events or something like that. Have crews go up against each other, create competition. As it stands, there is nothing at all interesting about crews. Furthermore, with a lack of outfits or cosmetics, and with pretty much no roleplay activities, I have a hard time calling this an MMORPG. I don't usually worry about cosmetics much, but it's an MMORPG and I understand why other people do. What Tower Fantasy could do is they could have more cosmetics instead of just having outfits. What I mean by this is to separate the footwear, leggings, torso, hand, and head cosmetics. This would allow for much more diverse characters, since as it stands, you usually see people running around with either simulacra appearances or the same 2 to 3 outfits on, just slightly recolored. Some of these leaderboard sections are stupid. The level and wormhole ones in particular, since the level one is based on who gets to max level first, and wormhole also has a max level and is based on whoever gets to the last level first. Since no one will ever surpass the top people because they did it the fastest, it's just pointless. Any leaderboard categories that are in there should be dynamic and prone to change over time, not set in stone. Furthermore, I think that the Apex League rankings should be displayed in the leaderboard. There are, of course, many bugs I would like to see fixed. However, since it's closed beta test, I won't go into those bugs too much. I will assume that they've been reported, at least the major ones, and they will be fixed by the full release. In the current stage of development, I gave this game a 6 out of 10. The story is relatively mid-tier. I left that out because I didn't want to spoil the story too much, and there are a lot of issues with the game in general. While there isn't a lot of content, while there is a lot of content to do in this game, a lot of the content is very lackluster and seems to have just been added for the sake of content. I do recommend giving the game a shot once it gets fully released. The full release of the game will be sometime in 2022. There is no information on the release date other than that. I will be making another review video after the closed beta test ends, which is in about 2 weeks from the time of this recording. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of Tower of Fantasy. I've been streaming a lot recently, so please check out my Twitch, and also please like and subscribe. I intend to get my YouTube videos rolling out. I intend to make a lot more usage out of YouTube, especially since I'm streaming on Twitch. I can use many of my Twitch clips to put onto YouTube. Apart from that, have a nice day.